Leonard is wonderfully prepared. He was for the last film, and equally so on this film. It's interesting to me that you're working with a fellow performer who must now turn around and look at you as an actor, and who has spent so many years working with you, and he knows that you know what you want to do, and he certainly knows what he wants to do, but is also, I find, a wonderful opportunity, because we may all go through life saying, gee, I would have never done it that way. So it gives me an opportunity to have him give me some direction, and perhaps areas that I maybe never had thought about, you know. And in a number of instances, he has proved very beneficial to me in that respect. And I respect his judgment, and I respect him as an actor and an excellent director.
There are people who, like Woody Allen, for example, who do it regularly. I'm not sure how you can do it picture after picture. It's hard work. You really are doing two jobs. The acting is enough, and the directing is enough. To do both is a lot of work. I have the advantage in Star Trek because I know Star Trek, and I know my character, and I know the other characters. So it's not as though each time I'm trying to develop a whole new world from scratch. So I have that advantage. But the disadvantages are that when you're in a scene, you can't keep your eye on it as the director might. And it's just very hard to do both jobs. Very tiring physically, too, because, particularly with the Spock character, because on days when I'd be in full makeup, it takes a couple hours to do that makeup. So you're doing putting in the full day as a director as well as the acting work and the makeup time. It's a long day. Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I've had a great time on this picture. I am very excited about this picture. I was very pleased with Star Trek 3. I thought we accomplished what we set out to do, which was to do a picture that was really about the people and their feelings about it, the Star Trek people and their feelings about each other. In this picture, I think we have done, I hope, the most fun, adventure, humorous Star Trek yet. A real runaway, have a good time, scary, exciting adventure with fun. You don't have to work very hard at getting this group back into that chemistry. That's I think, one of, for years and years, people have asked, what is the reason for the success of Star Trek? And certainly that's one of the major elements. It's not the only element, but one of the major elements is that this particular group of people have a chemistry. When you put them together, something starts to happen. They interact with each other in wonderful ways. That's not always true. You bring together 7 or 8 actors and actresses, it doesn't always happen that way. With this group, it does. And you don't have to teach them to do it. You don't have to lead them to do it. The day that they come back to work together, if you were to gather with them in the makeup department and watch them all getting their makeups on and telling each other stories about what's been happening to them since the last time they made a movie together, you'd find that it's like family coming together again and reporting to each other. So the chemistry is always there. It's for the director, in this case, it's a process of shaping a little bit and controlling a little bit and designing a little bit, but you have that chemistry working for you as a tremendous plus.
Well, when I came in, you see, I was not an either pilot of the series. I had done another film for Gene Roddenberry, and he screened one of the pilots for me, and he had wanted me from the beginning, but the network or someone there didn't want me because I had been playing heavies for about 8 or 9 years, a lot of westerns and that sort of thing, and evidently they couldn't see me in the role. Make a long story short, he screened this for me, and I saw the part of the physician who was played by another fine actor, a character man named John Hoyt. And it was, he was in maybe one scene in the movie, but it was a very effective scene in the television film. And I felt that it was a marvelous opportunity if this character could grow and expand. And I talked to Gene about that, and he thought maybe that it could. And then after we got into it, the fans began to pick up on McCoy. And so they began to feed him more and more, and as time went by, he became more important, and eventually moved into a co-starring position. And it's been an enjoyable role because he certainly isn't overexposed in these films, but usually when he comes in, he has a zinger here or there, or something humorous to say. So it's been a wonderful experience. He was married, and many people feel that was the reason, after a bitter divorce, that he joined Starfleet. He was also assumed to have had a daughter, and had the series gone on, they were going to bring her on the show, which we didn't do. Had a marvelous story mapped out. They were going to have her come aboard as, I don't know, as a nurse or something in that area, and have Shatner go for her, and it was going to tick McCoy off something awful. He knew what a stud he was. He didn't want him messing around with his daughter.
Anything I play now takes on those aspects that I, as a human being, have acquired. Therefore, the ingenuousness of 20 years ago has been mitigated by the cynicism of Hollywood. Those character flaws and values that I have are changed or amplified, and I unconsciously and sometimes at my best consciously bring them to bear on something I play. In that way, he's changed because I've changed.
I think there's a little bit of McCoy in me, and I think there's a little bit of Spock and Leonard, and a little bit of Kirk and Bill. And but a lot of it, Roddenberry laid out these characters very cleanly, and McCoy was supposed to be iconoclastic. He was the character was, I can't think of the man that he patterned him after, famed journalist. And as the show progressed, we seemed to feel these characters out. Things started to happen. I would throw Leonard a look, and he would respond. And that sort of thing kind of started to grow, and the writers began to pick up on that conflict and that love-hate relationship. So, I don't know, I guess there's, as I said, a bit of the character in all of us, but certainly not a lot of it. Well, he's going to have a couple of humorous experiences. This show is, I think, is a wonderful script, and it has a lot of comedy in it, which I think people are going to enjoy. It makes it very difficult because of not wanting to expose anything in the script, but what is going to happen will happen to all of us, more or less, where this film is concerned. We each have a few moments of terror and a lot of moments of laughter in it.
I think in Star Trek IV, more than in any of the other films yet, each of the characters, each of the family of Star Trek characters comes to life in a wonderfully dimensional kind of way. We tried to accomplish that as much as possible in Star Treks 2 and 3, but I think in 4 we have even more of that. I think we will really see the characters in a fresh and wonderful and new light, particularly the Spock character. This will be a Spock that's quite unlike any Spock you've seen before. This is a Spock who's still quite intelligent, but he's learning because of what he went through in Star Trek 3. He's really trying to learn his way around. He's trying to watch other people's behavior and see how he's supposed to act and behave. He's a little confused about some things. Quite funny, and I hope quite charming. I think that the core of Star Trek is a little different. The core is about the people. Whereas in some of the other science fiction or science fantasy films, the core is about the adventure. Perhaps in Star Trek IV, we're bridging the gap a little bit. We are kind of a people adventure, if you will, closer to a people adventure than we've been before. The special effects have had an interesting curve with us in the Star Trek movies because when we did the television series, we could not afford a lot of special effects. We had very, very little special effects. When Star Trek the Motion Picture, the first Star Trek movie was made, the pendulum swung very much the other way because suddenly the attitude was, well, we're making a big motion picture now and we have the money now, so let's really do some exciting special effects. It became so much a special effects movie that the people got lost, the characters got lost. And in Star Trek 2, 3, and 4, I think we have gradually found our way back to a moderate position, so that we're taking advantage of both of those items that are available to us, the characters and the actors on the one hand, and the special effects on the other. This particular film, I would say, in terms of the George Lucas kind of industrial light and magic special effects, I think this film leans least on that kind of element of all of the films we've done so far. Well, the future of Star Trek is dependent entirely on each individual film, it seems to me. As each film is made and opens, the studio decides what they're going to do next with Star Trek. My hope is that we will be able to continue the trend that we've established so far with these movies. I think most people will agree that the Star Trek movies through movie 1, movie 2, movie 3 have gotten better and better. And if we can continue that pattern, and if Star Trek 4 will be hopefully accepted as the best, and I think it has a chance of being accepted as the best of all of them so far, I would say there's a good chance that there'll be another Star Trek film after that. We make an effort with the Star Trek stories to base them on fact, scientific fact, not necessarily a particular event that has taken place, but we try to be scientifically credible. And that's the difference between, I think, science fiction and science fantasy. Science fantasy doesn't have to and doesn't try to be credible. You just do whatever the story calls for or whatever is dramatic or exciting. Science fiction should be, I think, based in some kind of potential scientific credibility. So that although, for example, we don't know how today to transport a person electronically from one place to another, there's a scientific theory behind that, which someday perhaps scientists could manage to work out. Star Trek plots should, at their best, depend very heavily on ideas, characters, people, circumstances, social questions, political questions, interplanetary questions, much more so than the hardware. The hardware should, in a good Star Trek film, be used to help tell the story about those other elements. I think Star Trek 4 will make a comment in a fun and exciting way. It's not a message picture. But there are some ideas about what's happening on Earth today in the 20th century that I think we're having some fun with, and which the audience will recognize and enjoy, I hope. Spock is very much like me. He's intelligent, well-read, logical, very likable, charming, great sense of humor, and totally humble, and never lies, right?
The object of drama is catharsis, and I don't think there'll be a cathartic feeling in this particular film. I do think that they'll be entertained, which is the other object of films and theater, and I think they'll have a few laughs, and I think they'll be excited by the premise and be suitably amazed by the special effects. Other than that, you'll get your money's worth.
Well, the number one thing, I suppose, is that they have enjoyed themselves and that they have seen a group of people who care for each other, and that perhaps some kind of a message has been delivered to them along the way. We seem to have managed that during the series, and hopefully if we can leave them with that spirit, I think it would make us all happy.
When the audience walks out of the theater having seen Star Trek 4, I'd like to have them think, wow, that was great. That was great. I want to get in line and see it again. I would like to say something to the science fiction readers and filmgoers and television watchers who have been incredibly supportive of Star Trek over the years and appreciative of Star Trek. They've been an enormous help and inspiration to us. They have kept us alive as a series and as a series of motion pictures. We are, all of us, very much aware of their contribution to what this whole world of science fiction is all about, and I say to all of them, live long and prosper.